Salma El-Wadani is finding out what life is like for women in Qatar.
Many aspects of their lives are strictly controlled by men, such as who they can marry and whether they're allowed to drive. But a grand national vision aims to achieve gender equality by 2030. How is that working out for women in the country's capital city?
The real lives of Doha's housewives. Saturday at 12 GMT. In half an hour, join Claudia Hammond for Health Check.
We'll be looking at the rise in cholera infections in some parts of the world and asking why there's a shortage of the vaccine.
It's even more wonderful. We didn't have to worry.
Stand by. And anytime, Bill.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Bill Lavallo. I chair the Belmont Middle and High School Building Committee. Today is Thursday, November 10th, 8 o'clock in the morning. I come to you via Zoom meeting. And thanks to Jeff and Belmont Media, we're going to be presenting the entire meeting via Zoom. I'm going to go through a couple procedures and then start right with the meeting. So we'll establish a quorum by roll call voting, which will confirm our attendance. And I'll ask folks, if you're not engaged to be speaking, please keep your mics muted so that we don't interfere with other people's discussions. However, when you do want to speak, please introduce yourself. A lot of people won't know who's speaking, so it's good that you introduce yourself first whenever you speak. When I do vote, ask for a vote for committee members, I'll ask all the committee members to turn their mics on so we could run through that voting pretty quickly. Material for today was sent out to committee members yesterday. I was trying to get it out a little early, so I apologize. And it will be available to the public following this meeting on the Belmont Middle and High School Building Committee website. There will be times today for public comment, and when that does occur, please, if you have something to say, raise your hand, press that button on your smartphone or computer, and our co-host will call on you. Or if you have a dial-up phone, press #9. And today, if there's any time when we lose our audio, we'll suspend the meeting, until which time we could reconnect our audio. That being said, I'll start with roll call. Emma Thurston, good morning.
Here, good morning.
Pat Bruce, good morning.
Good morning, Bill.
Diane Miller, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Diane. Dave Blazon, good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Tom Caputo, good morning.
Good morning, Bill.
Joel Mooney, good morning.
Good morning, Bill. Here.
Kate Bowen, good morning.
Good morning.
Bob McLaughlin, good morning.
Morning, Bill.
Chris Messer, good morning.
Good morning.
Joe DiStefano, good morning. Joe? Okay, come back to Joe. Mike McAllister.
Good morning, Bill. Hello, everyone.
Good morning, Mike. And myself, Bill Lavallo. That makes a quorum. We'll just go through some consultants here. Lisa Gibalerio.
Good morning.
Scribe. Tom Gasunas from CHA.
Good morning.
Tom. Don White from CHA.
Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Don. Sandra Saccone, CHA. Okay, Justin Ferdenze from CHA.
Morning, Bill.
Morning, Justin. Tony Del Greco from CHA.
Morning, Bill. And Sandra is here.
Okay. You sound like you could certify both of them. Okay. Brooke Trevis from Perkins and Will. There, Brooke? No, Vital Albuquerque from Perkins and Will.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning, Vital. Brian Spangler from Perkins and Will.
Here, good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Christine Mulligan from Perkins and Will.
Hi, good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Christine. From anyone else from Perkins and Will? Okay.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, thanks. From Skanska, Dan Lanaville. Good morning, Bill. Good morning, Dan. From Skanska, Jim Kraft.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jim. And from Skanska, Mike Morrison.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mike. Anyone else from Skanska?
I don't believe so.
Okay. And is Joe DeStefano logged on now? Okay. So we got a quorum. Let's share the agenda and just talk about it today. Today is a business meeting. Can you see the agenda?
Yes. Yes.
Good. Today's a business meeting with a focus on PV. So let's go through that. I did add some meetings. That was the update to the agenda that you may have received. I booked a meeting a week from today, Thursday morning, the 17th, in case we don't finish our business here today. We'll resume it on that meeting. So we could potentially finish today, but I don't know how long people could stay and how long our meeting will go. Our next business meeting is scheduled for December 8th. It's a Thursday morning at 8 o'clock. The following meeting, these are all virtual, by the way. In January is the 12th, another Thursday morning at 8 o'clock. And our February meeting, the 9th, is also a Thursday at 8 o'clock. And those are booked right now, all virtual. We'll look at, we'll approve minutes. We'll hear about what folks have been doing on the designer and OPM and project managers, construction managers side, and then we'll get an update on project costs. It's important that we do talk about costs first and understand where we are financially. We'll talk about alternate funding for the photovoltaic system. We'll talk about the bid results. I want to open it up to Belmont residents because there's been a lot of comments on PV photovoltaic. So you'll hear those two today interchanged, same thing. And then it's possible that the committee may feel ready to approve the PV system, the vendor procurement, which we have material to talk about. We'll move right into the rest of the meeting, rest of the business meeting, the traditional business meeting, reviewing pending changes that are coming up, reviewing some change orders that surface that are still being reviewed by the team. Presenting today will be a prime contract change order number 42. We'll go through that for approval. We'll pay our invoices. We'll hear about a construction update, review our schedule for construction, and again, see if there's a public comments as we get close to ending the meeting. So that's the agenda. Do I have any comments or questions from committee members? I know that some committee members have to leave around 9 o'clock. I do expect to get through our PV discussions within the first hour. So I want to make sure we capture all that.
So, Bill, will we have enough for a quorum to vote on any of the bills?
I'm hoping so, but we'll have to see how that goes.
Okay.
I'm told of 2 people that have to drop off from today.
Okay.
So I still think we'll have enough.
Okay.
That's a very good point. Okay, so our next.
Bill,
yes.
Can I just ask a technical question? Maybe not even that technical. The materials have been coming in closer and closer to the meeting time, and given how substantial they are, it's very difficult to go through them reasonably. Will we be getting more time going forward on that?
CHA, can you comment on that?
Sure.
I beg for the material. Kate, Don knows this. Everyone, I beg for the material, but I don't produce it. So,
but just as a reference, most committee, well, at least on the school committee, we have a policy of, less than 48 hours before a meeting. So that's sort of the minimum I would expect as a context.
We were scrubbing the financial reports from Skanska, going back and forth. It took more time than usual to get through those. The biggest component was assembling all the information related to the PV bids, and that's been a challenge. So that's why we're running late this month.
So Kate, it is my desire, as the folks know, I start over a week ahead asking for material, and we've been getting pretty good. This, as Don said, this week has been a challenge, just trying to get all the PV material pulled together, and the bids came in, and then it had to assemble. So these sound like excuses, and they are to extent, but I do recognize that committee members need a couple of days because of their busy schedule. I'll work towards that, and I do think our regular business has been achieving that, and this month we did fall short. So I apologize if committee members didn't have adequate time for review this time. And if there are things that you want to push off until next month because of that, just let me know. Okay, project team. So you heard that. We have to do better at getting material to them. I'll move on. Next item on the agenda then is meeting minutes. This is today, by the way, is meeting number 150. Just for a frame of reference, that sounds like a lot. I think there's been a lot more meetings than that, but that's our public meeting. We have 36 weeks on the schedule until we're turning the school over complete in the summer of next year. Technically 23 weeks until the team is looking for a TCO to start occupying the middle school side. That's not with middle schoolers, but just getting some activity going in there to allow some of the swing spaces to take place and get those project spaces that are on the demising line between the middle school and high school underway for construction. That's not a lot of time. So we're really getting down to crunch time. And so there's a lot of things we're trying to do here. I do think we could keep a pace of one meeting a month, but we may have to start moving that a little more as some of the activities get closer to, get closer to critical for transferring the school over. So we'll stay here. So our last meeting was on October 13th. I think I'm presenting it now. Yeah. It was meeting number 149, Thursday morning. I hope committee members had time to review these, and if you would like to push this off until next month because you didn't have time, let me know and we'll do that. I did not receive any comments from committee members. At this time, are there any comments or adjustments proposed for the meeting minutes? Okay, not hearing any. Is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
Bob McLaughlin, move approval.
Second?
Yeah, Pat, second.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go through roll call voting. So committee members, please turn your mics on. Okay, all in favor, Emma Thurston?
Yes.
Pat Bruce?
Yes.
Diane Miller?
Yes.
Dave Blazon?
Yes.
Tom Caputo?
Yes.
Joel Mooney?
Yes.
Kate Bowen?
Abstain.
Bob McLaughlin?
Yes.
Chris Messer?
Abstain.
And Mike McAllister?
Yes.
Bill Lovello, yes. Oh, Joe DiStefano, are you here? Okay. Next item on the agenda then is project cost updates, updates on project costs. So, I'm sorry, review of designer activity. This would go pretty quick, but I do want to make sure we hear from our team of what's been going on. So I'll start presenting, and I think CHA, I don't know who's going to talk first on this from CHA.
That'll be me, Bill.
Okay, Tony, go right ahead. Thank you.
All right, so just to touch on some things you guys don't typically see. Everything else is pretty normal from month to month, but we've been coordinating with Skanska on locker installations and logistics and how to access the spaces while classes are in session. Then we'll go right down to PV. The change this month of PV was the invitations to bid have gone out. They were received back and they've been reviewed. Continuing to work with Skanska for winter work schedules. And another thing, getting in and out of the spaces. So playing fields has been on here before, but you haven't seen the drainage. So the drainage has been going in. The middle school parking lot and driveway asphalt binder has been put down. So we were overseeing that. Elevator installation. I don't think you saw that. And that's something new that we've been overseeing. And the Stanley grid installation started. So, and something else to look at. So those are the new things this month. Everything else is typical.
Questions for committee members for CHA? Hearing none, Brian? Okay.
Is the building tight now?
Basically it is.
Yep. It is.
There's still some areas, Chris, that we need storefront.
Yeah.
And we'll go over the construction activity a little later in the meeting. This is project oversight, but yeah, we are tight.
Good.
We've been tight for a while too. Okay, Perkins and Will. Brian, you want to?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. This is Brian Spangler, project architect with Perkins and Will. Pretty much status quo for us on the monthly update. We're out here on a regular basis, working with everyone, focusing mostly on the middle school and the athletic fields. Probably, if you're tracking the quantities of change order requests and RFIs and submittals and all the other quantities we list from month to month, it's about double of what we had last month, which represents a big uptick in activity in the middle school. So lots going on, and really don't think I have anything else specific to note unless anyone has any questions about our activities over the last month.
Committee members? Okay, thank you, Brian. And we'll talk about Skanska's project management. Mike Morrison.
Yep, Mike Morrison, project manager with Skanska. So probably going to steer clear from some of the site activities. Tony and Brian hit on most of them, and we'll get into that when we get to the photos later. But essentially, the big items listed there from project management. A lot of times, schedule updates. We're getting into finishes now. So some of the materials coming in for classroom casework and finished tile, ceiling tile. So managing those deliveries and making sure we're hitting our dates there has been a big part of it. Attending regular meetings with the facilities and the school on the high school side to make sure that we're staying on top of any issues that come up, not just on our side of the fence, but also in the school the best we can, and doing that in coordination with CHA to stay clear of student activities. So that's been a big piece of what we do. Also been a big push in issuances of change orders. So in the bottom, the change order management section, you'll notice the number that we actually push out. This has been a big hurdle for us as we continue to catch up. So we always want to see that number higher than the number coming in, which is it is. We pushed out 42 PCOs, 28 PCOs and 8 allowance expenditures this month, which is a good number for us. We're constantly trying to get those out of the pending and into the submission, so we kind of have a better understanding where we stand with the overall budget. So going to hit on the site activities later on, Bill. So I think that's it, unless others have questions.
Well, one is you're way down on your project site meetings. You only have 77 this month, so
I'll have to pick up on that. There might have been some overlap between Paige and I that I missed out, but I'm sure that'll be up next month for sure.
Okay. Well, hopefully you're winding down as things are getting well organized. Now, the other thing I heard is that you have delivery issues, and I know that's part of project management is and one of the reasons we were struggling and the schedule came out a little late yesterday was also because you had to rework the schedule due to some delivery changes. You want to just talk about what that means? Maybe less on the specifics and more about how you work through, disappointing news about deliveries.
Yeah, so it's an unfortunate part of kind of what seems to be a regular occurrence for us, but we keep constant and very deliberate conversations with our subcontractors about deliveries and materials, tracking when they're coming, when they've been released, and lead times. It's not a new process, but we have to be very diligent about it because the lead times and the delivery dates, especially recently, seem to move on us without much notice. So we're kind of proactive in that and reaching out and make sure we have those dates locked in and following up after we do. So, we have had some dates just in the last 2 weeks, critical ones for us in terms of how we sequence interior finishes that have pushed from just material supply issues, our issues to manage with our subs, things we're working through with Mikey, our superintendent, and as well as, our trade partners. So we're constantly evaluating that and figuring out ways to be flexible with how we're proceeding with construction if we do get some of these materials. So as Bill mentioned, we spent majority of the day yesterday, working through some of that and resequencing issues, resequencing crews and manpower where they're working to try to account for that the best we can and keep on schedule. So we've done that. It's nothing really new. We've been doing it all along, and we'll keep on that task to make sure we hit the end dates. But it's a constant effort to make sure we know when things are coming in and we're ready for it when it does, and we're not stacking trades on top of each other. So,
yeah. Comments or questions from committee members on either Skanska's project management work or anybody else that presented? Okay.
Bill, my only question would be based on all the review of work, it sounds like you just had another schedule come out. If it ever gets to the point where it impacts our summer end date, how far along can you go? So I just, I'm not trying to paint this bleak, just need to make sure that we understand it.
So I'll ask Mike to comment, but we present the schedule every month. It's one of the last things we do. We're still going to present a schedule that's showing on time. Mike and his team works to readjust, as he was saying, to maintain the schedule. Mm-hmm. And this schedule update happens every month. It's not just, oh my goodness, we had right, Mike, you're working these schedule reviews every month, if not more than once a month.
Yeah, so we publish them every month, but we have our meetings bi-weekly. So we update every 2 weeks to make sure that we do have a good handle on not just material, but also progress of work in the field. So we're not surprised when things happen. In terms of the end date, it's on everyone's mind. We have the OAC meeting. So if we have a issue, we talk about it. But I think ultimately, we've been pretty successful reworking our schedule to accommodate that. But your point is well taken. I mean, we're getting closer to the end, right? So we have less time to really manage if we do have further impact. So it gets tougher and tougher the closer to the end date you get. But we're moving into kind of the new phase with finishes. So we're getting out of the structure of the walls, the rough-in MEPs. Mm-hmm. So we're doing really well in those areas, and now it's just kind of the finishing touches we're coordinating. So I don't know if that answers your question. All I can say is we're proactive, we're communicating when we have issues, and we're trying to find the best way to deal with them as they come up.
I'm just going to jump in and give one example to kind of give people a thought of what it is. So if the millwork essay is delayed and our schedule is put the millwork in, then put the floor in, we might resequence it to put the floor in and then put the millwork in. That means we have to do some extra protection on the floor, but we have to make that decision. And then we hold people accountable. If they're late, they have to pay for that protection. So it's kind of working through those type of things, resequence, and what are the impacts. And then if it's something that we need help making a decision with the ownership, then we'll bring it up in the OAC if we think it's something that the rest of the team should be brought into and not making the decision just in our court.
Any other comments? Thank you, folks. So our next item on the agenda is critical to getting into PV. We're going to start phasing into this now, and that is a discussion of our overall project finances. And so this you've seen before. And is this Don that's going to present this, or Justin?
No, this is me. This is Don.
Okay. Don White. Okay. And so this, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because folks have seen this before, but Don, maybe just a quick highlight of what's changed, and then we'll take questions from committee members.
Sure. The cover sheet is a reflection of the subsequent pages that feed amount paid to date. That is updated on a monthly basis, and the projections are evaluated on a monthly basis for probable final cost. So we went through that exercise.
So overall project, right? Overall project to date.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. What we don't have an update on is the pro pay is the same as last month. We have submitted one new one, but there were no payments that we had information on to reflect on this. So those numbers are the same as last month. And
we're still receiving grant participation.
Right, likely until early next year.
At which time it gets suspended because we hit our 95% threshold of the grant maximum. And then we have to wait until the audit to receive the final disbursement. And that we understand is a cash flow that likely occurs in late 2024 or 25. It's a process that the state goes through, and it takes them time. So, and we have to pull all the material together. So this discussion we've had with town financial folks to recognize that there is a cash flow plan that they have to put together starting next year, because there's some money that has to be, I don't want to use the word floated, but has to be put up front until the final project finances are confirmed by the state and we get our final payment. Any questions on that? It doesn't change the grant. It doesn't change the project total. It's a cash flow issue, but it is important from the financial side.
And just Bill, one minor comment or quick comment. This is not new. This is not a new development. It's always been understood and understood by all through, everyone who's been involved with any MSBA projects. This is the way the system works.
And I should say that CHA put together a cash flow years ago, updates it every month, goes into town accounting and town treasurer's office. It's discussed on a monthly basis. And so, yes, it's not new. I'm explaining as we get closer and closer to the end of the year, we'll see those numbers stop somewhere around this number up here, somewhere around, I think, 74,000, right? This number here. It'll stop. Right now we're at 64, and it'll hold there until the final project audit is done.
Yes.
Okay.
Bill, it's Tom. I had one quick question. Has there been any changes to or any surprises regarding what's been deemed eligible and ineligible? I know that's always a bit of a challenge and an area that we're trying to pay attention to. Any new news there? Or are we feeling pretty comfortable about eligibility?
So no change. Yeah. Go ahead, Tom.
No changes in the process or in the system. It's an ongoing review, Tom, with the MSBA. And obviously, we're putting things in and making the case for everything to be eligible that should be in the eligible category. But it's like a review with auditors. It kind of goes back and forth a little bit. But overall, we expect the eligibility to be all the way up, just because we have so many costs that exceed our caps because of the caps that have been put on.
Okay, good. Glad to hear that. It's just if it turns out that we bump into certain thresholds, obviously that burden sort of comes back to the taxpayer. But to your point, there's a lot that we have that theoretically should be eligible. So I'm glad to hear we seem to be making good progress there. So thank you.
So over a year ago, we had an adjustment made by the state from the maximum commitment of $80,664,000, and they reduced it by 1.2, I think, somewhere around there. And that had to do with how the final bids came in 2019 and 2020. So, and that represented about 1.5% of their commitment, I think, somewhere in that range. So, and we haven't seen any notifications since then.
Great, thanks.
And we won't see it, by the way, until the final audit in 2024. Is that right, Tom? We won't see another update from them.
That's correct.
Okay, so the anticipated tax burden that Tom was talking about, Tom Caputo, was approximately $214,500,000. We've spent to date on the taxpayer burden of $187 million. So it's about 87% of the taxpayer burden has been realized already, and we're going to find out that we are, I think, 90% complete in construction. We get to that.
Correct.
Don, we'll keep going, Don.
Yeah, go to page 2 is the contingency expenditure log. No updates to the owner contingency monies, there will be next month, but as of 9/30, which is what these numbers represent, no changes there. B is the approved construction contingency, and got to go to the next page 3 for the latest information. The bottom entry is PCCO number 41 that was approved at the building committee meeting last month for $255,883. That takes the construction contingency effective at that time to $2,456,332 over the original contingency budget amount. Total PCCOs through 41 is $14,513,248.
So that's the contract change, people that are listening.
The change to Skanska's GMP.
All right. Okay.
We'll go to the next page. A lot of this is somewhat redundant on page 4.
But it establishes this is the current GMP value.
That's the value through last month's approved PCCO, correct? And that feeds into the contingency allowance summary page. So on page 5, which is the additional anticipated and potential cost of the GMP, this is the one that there's a lot of back and forth to get to these numbers to post them. What we've listed is the PCCO number 42, which is being presented at this building committee meeting for an added cost of $250,021 to Skanska's GMP. The subsequent numbers are what are from their cost exposure log, and these are the anticipated additional expenditures moving forward. So we've got the PCOs that are submitted and currently under review right now, and that dollar amount is $514,244. We have total of outstanding cost events. That is $329,011. Pending revisions, just a couple of items in that category. It's actually showing a reduction of $27,720. And the total of expenditure of potential exposures, and these are the what we've referred to in the past as unknown unknowns, possibilities of things we experienced in phase 1. We're at $455,933. So,
and a big piece of this is PV that we'll talk about in a little bit. So next month, depending how we flush PV out this month, that's going to change. I just want to call attention to the fact that this is what Mike Morrison from Skanska was talking about earlier. This is what's in for review, the $500,000, and this is what's remaining right now. So we're well under $1 million that has to get resolved. And some of these, there's still a lot of them because they're quite small that add up. But if you remember a year ago, there were 7 figures here. So we're cleaning things up. These are all in the project budget. They have been, and it's good to see them. Good to see them getting resolved. I'd like to see them go away. They're not going to go away, but say resolved. And if this is the worst, Don, right? This is like if everything was considered, that would be the maximum contract value.
Based on what we know right now, that is the projected value of the GMP, including all the items that we just discussed. And this gets posted to the next page where we pull everything together. Page 6 is the allowance and contingency summary. Total project budget, those numbers have not changed.
So just for the community that's listening, the first column is what we originally had in 2020 at our GMP, so original contract with Skanska for construction. The middle column is where we stand today. And what we've always been looking at is what's our exposure through the end of the job. So our focus has usually been on the far right column.
That's right.
Yeah. And so
then we have the Skanska GMP of the numbers we just looked at. The current value of $254 million and change was shown as through PCCO number 41 on the previous pages.
Right here.
The projected value of $256,375,922 was what we just discussed, that with all the potential additional costs added in, where the GMP could land. And after that, we've got the offsetting costs that we've been showing each month, the 2 COVID items as cost reductions, as well as the builder's risk claims, 407,200, which is actively being reviewed by Zurich right now. That is in the works. So if we, after making those reductions, this shows a revised anticipated GMP total of 254,637,249. And then we pull everything together based on all of the allowances and contingencies. And owner's contingency would continue to show a likely final figure of $800,000. The owner's construction contingency that we looked, owner's construction contingency is the GMP expenditures and PCCOs. That is a overrun of $3,977,821.
Today it's 2.456 million. We just reviewed that one page prior, right?
Correct. The allowances in Skanska contingency, we're continuing to project a $0 final figure. We are still trying to reconcile that based on summer monies that were spent. So we're trying to update that for next month, but I do not anticipate that we'll be showing anything other than zeros as a final projection there.
And that's not unreasonable, considering that those numbers were there for things that were anticipated or otherwise needed for the project.
Yep. So we have the soft cost contingency, which was pulled from the first page in terms of anticipated expenditures versus the budgeted amounts. And we're still at a positive 2,302,327. We've got the offsetting COVID funds that we're showing. And that shows for an allowance today projected at $455,979.
And, as you see the tally here for the past 9 months, we've been hovering around $500,000, trying to keep it there above and below that threshold. So we're slightly less than last month again. About right. 9 months left to go on construction.
And then we have the summary of project costs to date versus showing phase 1 versus phase 2, total amount billed through the period of 10/31 is the 228, 865, 878. The contract value adjusted through the previous PCCO is the 254, and that equates to an 89.8% completion on the overall project.
Don, I rounded it up to 90%. Sounds better. Or 90%, 10%. Right. Yeah.
More better. In the phase 2 completion is at 69.4%.
Right here. Yep. Any questions from committee members then? This is our tally overall, and that's where we stand. It's important to understand this for our next discussion on PV. And just to quickly, I forgot, Don, we have the requisition here, as you said.
Yes, there are, as you see at the top, there are 757 pages. We're only going to look at the first 2, and this is the summaries of.
I never send the full rec. I know
that. It's just, but it's an illustration of how extensive it is, and there is a lot of information, and it takes a long time to get through it. And there's a good process of review, back and forth, and reconciliation as to an amount that everybody agrees to. And that's what this represents.
And it's, by the way, every month, interesting, I do open it up. I don't look at 750, but it's in the 700 range lately. It's not like this month is any bigger than the last month.
Yep. And every page gets reviewed.
And we start, by the way, I think Skanska starts pulling that together about the middle of the month, right? Mike?
That's correct. Yep. The 15th, we start getting subrecs in.
So this is how we're getting ready for next month's business meeting. Starts within a week of this meeting. Okay, and just to quickly wrap up with the GMP we talked about, 254 million total completed and stored to date is this value, and you take out the retainage, and we're being asked this month to pay $3,670,265.
Correct.
So I'm just looking to see if committee members have their hands up at this point. So the next item I don't have an exhibit for, but I will talk briefly and take some questions. We've been asked, and I've been thankful for the Belmont community to keep looking at ways that that photovoltaic solar panels will help benefit the community in the long run, and how we can maximize PV coverage on the roof for this project. A little while ago, probably less than a couple of months ago, the present administration passed an act called the Inflation Reduction Act. And I've been doing some reading thanks to material that's been sent to me from members in the Belmont community about what's in there. And there is now a credit grant program that can be applied to tax exempt municipalities. Okay, so that would apply to us, where otherwise we were not, as owners of a PV system, we weren't able to grab any of those credits. Unlike if you put something on your house or private business, you can have applied to those in the past. So what the Inflation Reduction Act is doing is trying to encourage more spending in that sector of renewable resources, specifically about how this might apply to our project. We've had, I think, 3 meetings with town council on this and how it may apply. It's a fairly new bill that came out. It doesn't have all the backing behind it yet. The processes of what this means isn't in place yet. So from the review of existing material, I'm going to use a term that it seems that our project broadly qualifies that we can apply and receive a grant for to offset costs. But it is a grant, meaning that you spend the money and then get the money back. There are a couple of little trips right now that seem to be in the legislation in the act that's not well defined. And one of them talks about projects that would be excluded if the renewable energy is being used to heat a swimming pool. Whoa. In our big project here, we do have some of the PV that will be used to heat the swimming pool. Everything in our building is electric. Everything in our building is electric. Our PV system is on the building side, the load side of the meter, meaning that it will offset energy that's being used to heat the pool. Does that completely disqualify us? Not clear, because this is new. There's no precedence yet of other solutions across the country that could be reviewed. So it seems that our project fits the mold of what this bill, this Inflation Reduction Act wants to do. It wants to help municipalities. We're a good candidate for that. So possibly it would be prorated. Okay, maybe there's a percentage of the panels that based on the energy use, which we can ask our design team to show, because they've already calculated that during our early energy studies of the building. It's something that I think is reasonable for an argument. How much can we expect? I'm told that the base credit starts at 6% and could go all the way up to 30% for a municipal type project. It could actually get even higher than that, but we wouldn't necessarily qualify for those. Things that make it higher would be domestic procurement of material, which we did not have in our bids, so it's unlikely we'll see that. And also regional and demographic conditions, brownfield site, disadvantaged type communities, types things like that. So that's not going to apply here, but still 30% of the project cost could be eligible. Now, there are three factors that make that eligible. We seem to apply to the first one, starting construction within 60 days. 60 days of what? Well, 60 days of when the regulations and the details come out, which they haven't come out yet. And what does the start of construction mean? It's not defined. Is it swinging a hammer or actually starting the overall package of either design or even some level of installation, which we can accomplish fairly quickly, putting conduit up, that sort of thing. So the other two are not necessarily triggers for us. One is a project under 1 megawatt. We know ours is larger. There's also another one that triggers if we're requiring prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. And this is not Massachusetts prevailing wage, it's solar prevailing wages and apprenticeship, which we didn't write in. So our focus is really looking at starting within the requirements of this, within, let's say, 60 days or whatever they define, and we're poised to do that. We are poised to do that if we approve PV now. There's another thing that would take away from the 30%, and that is municipal project, which ours is, but it's so it's 15% reduction. It's not 15% subtracted from 30%, as it was explained to me. It's 15% reduction of the 30%. So that leaves you 85% of 30, or about 25%. So it's possible we can get up to 25% of our eligible project costs reimbursed. What is a project? That's a good point. Is the project just the PV, or is the project the whole project? And I say that because there's a requirement that the grant funding cannot happen from this if you're already receiving costs from another grant. Now, we know that MSBA is participating in the building project, but they're not participating at all because it's ineligible in the photovoltaic component. So again, how do you define the project? And this is a little tricky because although it's a PV component, it's still being billed through the overall bigger project. So these things are not completely defined yet. There seems to be a rationale that this can be explained, and again, this project certainly broadly qualifies for the intent of what the Inflation Reduction Act is trying to do. As far as timing, even though we don't, as a municipality, file tax returns, the payment cannot happen until the tax return period, which would be next year, spring of next year, 23. So I'm being told that payments wouldn't be planned until 2024. Okay, so if we were to receive a grant by applying as a community, the cash would not come back to Belmont until 2024. We could and we should plan on submitting an application next year sometime. It seems reasonable that the powers to be would have the information put together. Now the election's behind us, people will work to do this and start doling out, start reviewing and approving applications. And a couple other things. Who's doing this? It's unclear. It goes through the Treasury, but EPA seems to have a handle on this. I have one of my colleagues who was out at Greenbuild. It sounds exactly what it is, building for a greener community out in the West Coast. And one of the keynote speakers was a deputy director of the EPA. And that person said, we have $100 billion to be given out, $10 billion a year. It's an insurmountable process of reviewing and dealing with the applications, and they're staffing up right now to do that. So there's an entity right now that seems to be trying to get focused on dealing with this. If we apply based on what we approve today, or this week, or this month, whenever we approve PV, it's possible that the town would receive the money in 2024. If we wanted to do more PV, it potentially could be considered a different project and be submitted again. In other words, the question I asked, is there a restriction that the community municipal could only apply once for a grant? And the answer is no. They can only apply once for one project, but if you could expect that fees are coming or grant money is coming in 24, you're not, if you were to go out with more PV, you'd have to rebid. That process probably takes another 4 or 6 months, whatever the case may be. You're looking at 25. You put another application in. That seems reasonable. It's a new project, and even that could get some grant money, ideally the same percentage. So it's not a one within some range of how the government is dealing with this, and where does the money go? So it's not the building committee that owns it. So the town would be applying, the school department would have you for this credit, would work with them. When it comes in, I understand Jennifer's not here, the town finance director, but we had conversations with her. She said it goes into general funds. And then it has to be distributed by the town, whoever makes those votes, to where it needs to be best suited. I think there's a good argument to hope and direct, just like ARPA funds, to this project to continue to help bolster the PV purchase and installation for the project. I can't tell you any more. I told you all my notes, but I'm happy to have a little discussion here, but I don't have any more answers. Our town council was gracious to be able to sort of give us the best they could now. My direction to them was to don't do anything more at this point. Maybe we'll check in 4 months when there's ideally more information, but didn't want to spend time, waste time, accrue money on this project for them to be checking on things week after week after week. I don't think we're moving that fast, and we wouldn't be applying for this. Nothing we do changes the way they're going to be dictating how this goes. And one suggestion might be that we keep PV separate on the invoicing or the accounting, and we've been doing that anyway. So I think that we'll keep all our paperwork pretty clear. Any questions for committee members? Emma.
Hi, it's Emma. Yeah, thanks for all that info. Does this change the decision-making process that we need to make now in any way?
So we're going to go into that. I give you some background, right? We gave our finances. I gave you the Inflation Reduction Act. We're going to dig into the bids and the finances. So what I tried to do with this is give everybody some good background information. Yes, it influences what we talk about in PV. Absolutely does.
Thanks.
And by the way, we talked about this last month, right? And there was a strong commitment from Belmont community to me, to Patrice's office, to say, hey, let's look at this as much as we can now before your next meeting when you approve PV, to see what this can do to help offset the initial costs of the PV installation. I can tell you it does not and will not help us in our finance cash flow offset anything right up front. And committee members could decide themselves, but it seems inappropriate that we would automatically count on it for any planning right now. That's my opinion. Tom Caputo.
Yeah, Bill, thanks for going through this and trying to get to the bottom of it. It sounds pretty exciting and certainly something that we should pursue. One clarification, though, based upon your understanding, you talked about 60 days from some date. Can you just explain a little more about what that 60-day timeline is? And then the other quick one I had, and you may not know the answer to this, but was there any allowance in the law for sort of pre-eligibility certification? I got to believe if municipalities are going to go out and spend millions of dollars on this, and if they're expecting 30%, payback, like they may need some kind of certification that, like, yes, in fact, they're eligible, rather than just sort of submitting receipts and crossing their fingers after the project is complete. So was there any allowance for that?
Good point, Tom. Since there's no process guidelines put together, there's no answers to your questions. I asked a bunch of questions, right? And there's just the act. There's not the process of applying or getting approval or receiving the money. However, the I mean, there's going to be a process that's going to be in place. The 60 days is written in from the start of when you could, I forget exactly what the wording is, but 60 days. And the trigger is when that process is put together. So it's not even, the 60 days isn't even counting yet. If it takes 3 months, it's 60 days from 3 months. If it takes 1 month, 6 days from 1 month. So there's no prediction of when that's good. There's no schedule of when that's going to be ready to start the clock counting. I truly think that nothing was going to happen before the election. So now we'll see what happens on that part. Let me think if I answered all your questions, right? Oh, no, and then what, no, the bigger issue is what is construction? And that's not defined. Is it, if we look at it, when we call the start, we call it when we issue an authorization to proceed. Billing start right away on project management, procurement. And we already started design. We took the design out, which I would consider an eligible cost, right? We accelerated design. So how construction is defined is yet to be defined. So I had a lot of questions for legal and they couldn't answer them, and they understood. Is it truly swinging a hammer? Is it truly putting a PV panel up? Could we say pulling conduit or running conduit and pulling wire as start of construction, which we could do pretty quickly? And the answer is not there yet.
Keep going. Go ahead, Kate.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm very interested in learning more about the program. Obviously, it's unfolding, and I appreciate all the information you've shared today. And it sounds like to me it's so uncertain that we can't be relying on it in this moment going forward. And I'm just cognizant of how this overall energy plan affects our building, and I'm also wondering what other things may be available, thinking of multiple hat wearing here, for the town that's a total benefit to the community under this grant. So those are the things that are coming up as you're explaining it. But just landing on, I'm not sure how we can count on this funding in our plan going forward.
Emma had a similar thing. If you remember some of the, I know Tom was involved with some of the ARPA funding discussions. This seems so similar, right? It wasn't very clear at the beginning. How can you use it? What it's going to be used? How do you get it? And all that sort of stuff. So it's playing itself out again because it's new, because it's unique. We're going to have to give it time. As Kate said, how do you plan for it? Maybe you don't plan for it, or maybe you plan a plan B. If it's there, how do you deal with it? But you can't deal with it today because you don't know what's there. Chris,
Bill,
you have your hand up?
I had a real quick question. Who in which department within the government is going to oversee the program?
Unclear. I asked that question too. Unclear.
Okay.
Okay. So I do know that, as I said, one of my principals was out and a keynote speaker talked about managing it. I don't know if it was 100% of it, but it was 10 million a year out of, the EPA had their hand on that too.
Okay. Bob McLaughlin.
Yeah, as I listen to you, the danger I see is we may be so ready that we get ahead of the program and become ineligible because we're an existing program already being done, and the program is really designed to incentivize people to go somewhere. So I think that's a danger.
Good point. I may have phrased it wrong. I don't know if it says it must start within 60 days or it must start no later than 60 days. So again, there's two different meanings there because
but I'm sure they're not going around funding projects that are all completed, and they may not be
no retroactive.
Well, okay, but if we started, we become retroactive. So keep your eye on that possible fatal problem.
But delaying is not. I don't think it's that we're promoting delaying either. But it's a good point. I didn't even ask that one. Okay, not seeing any more hands up. Let's go to, so this is all one conversation, by the way. So there are two, so we have proposals that came in, and I'm going to ask, I think, CHA, Don White, to present them. We have, I should say, let me step back. We have the package of PV that came in. Don White's going to present that. There are two packages or two paths that we worked on as potential solutions for PV procurement. there could be others that committee wants to explore, but at least we're putting two in front of you that seem to be clear paths. I'm not saying that we should take or can't take either of them right now, but let's talk about them. So Don, are you ready to talk? And I'll start sharing.
Yeah.
Don, if you could just quickly, Kate wants to add some additional comment.
I'm sorry.
Just briefly, because I did allude to it. I know as a town we have other buildings that are solar ready, and so I think this conversation is really helpful in the larger context of, if there's a way for us to have information here that could provide for other buildings that might benefit from this funding. I think it's good to hear that. I know Wellington had been planned for solar, and the pool house, and maybe some other things that I don't know of that could yield a total benefit.
And Kate brings up a good point. And so we're dealing with town council, so they certainly can share that knowledge with other groups, right? Don, I'm not showing actually package, the second one, just because it has all the.
I just want to run through quickly the process, what's happened over the last few weeks. In terms of running through the numbers on the RTA, and let Mike Morrison, who assembled this from Skanska, run through the particulars of the numbers. But right now, we took bids 2 weeks ago today on October 27th. We had 6 firms that were pre-qualified to bid on this work. 3 of the 6 firms, that's Lavangi Electric, Griffin Electric, Daigle Electric. Firms that were pre-qualified, that did Schmidt and Universal. So we received the bids and tabulated everything. Now, what we did was break up the bid package into a base bid, an alternate number 1, and an alternate number 2. And we did. There were budgetary issues that we'd have to consider doing something less than the full amount of PV to meet the budget for this line item. So we had a base bid, which included basically all the 4th floor roof, the main high school, and a little area extending into building D. So certainly the biggest part of the project. We had alternate number 1. And then we had an alternate number 2, which is the 3rd floor roof in building F. And so the numbers were submitted accordingly, and it reflects right here what the bid results were. The base bid.
Can I pause you, Don? Yep. Also in the base bid was all the infrastructure. Can you explain what I mean by that?
Well, the infrastructure being a big component of the PV system is the inverters, which are installed and take the power from the panels and convert it to send it down to the switchgear room where it ties into the main electrical system. There are a lot of moving parts, a lot of pieces and parts to this entire system. All of the inverters would be installed in phase 1. All of the other work associated with the panels is specific to that alternate.
So let me further clarify. Everything going from the meter all the way up to supply the full package of PV, including alternate 1 and 2, is in the base bid, with the exception of the panels and racking system.
And pulling the wires associated.
And only over to the inverters, not all the way.
It's pulling the wires associated with the panels put in place under either the base bid or the particular alternate.
So all the infrastructure, all the connections through the building, interconnection, metering, et cetera, will all be in place under the base bid. And I say that because if we start to slice this up, what are we excluding and what can happen in the future? And so we'll get to that discussion. But Don, we remind people that we had a budget in our GMP or in our budget, I should say. We had a number in our overall budget that we've been tracking of 2.6 million. From that, there was about 300,000 that was we had to allocate for a variety of things that are not related specifically to the electrical bid, but have to do with putting PV on the roof that other trades have a piece of, and include our design piece, right? So our real net, if you're comparing apples to apples here, would be about 2.3. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that's correct. So yeah, there were several components of work that, you know, are coming out of the 2.6 million that are PV related. So it certainly is more than just the bid amounts from the three bidders.
So I'm showing something here where Wayne Griffin Electric, if you add up everything, base bid alternate 1 and alternate 2 is the low bidder at 2.67 million, and that's over our 2.3 budget number by about 16%. And we'll get into the actual numbers. If you just add the base bid and alternate 1, it's hovering around 2.4 million, and that's about 4.5% really over our 2.3 budget. Certainly, if you just take the base bid, it's under our budget. But if you take our base bid, we can award to Wayne Griffin anyways, because the low bidder of just base bid is Levangie. But as soon as you add Levangie's base bid and alternate 1, they're not the low bidder anymore. So for purposes of the discussion going forward right now, we're going to consider options of alternate 1 or alternate 1 and 2 as solutions. Both of those would apply to Wayne Griffin Electric. Any questions from committee members?
And Griffin is the electrical contractor on the base building, as we know.
Shouldn't be a lot of finger pointing there. We'll just spend a brief moment to say that there are some allowances. This is some of the numbers we talked about that are being added into that base bid to offset costs that have to apply to other trades. And that's a $79,000 allowance there. That's this number right down here, right down, and that doesn't change any scenario we look at. So when you add all that up, you come up with the 2.7 million here. In the GMP currently is 2.143 million. That's not in our total budget that we've allocated, but in our GMP, it's 2.143 million. So it shows a deficit of the 605,000. I'm going to walk people through this. Don did a good job along with Mike. We're going to go to this next page here. If you take the 605,000 that has to change from our base contract and you mark it up, that change order would be 665,000 right here. Okay. We're gonna go down to this last page and say that within our budget, within our tracking budget overall, we were carrying about $450,000. That if you add that to the 2.1, that's the 2.6. So we had already allocated nearly $500,000 to that, along with some deductions that are pertinent to this, whether it's some changes to switchgear to allow the PV to plug in, or the design costs, conduit pathways, to get up and down that we needed. That gives us a net available still out of our forecasting of $232,000. Okay. As I said, the number before we need to reach was $665,000 as a change order. So if you go through this solution, which is all of the PV, 1.35 megawatts, we need to pull out of our budget initial funding of $433,000. I'll remind you that, I don't know if you folks can see this. Did you guys just see a switch in the page?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. If you remind you that all we had predicted at the end available was 455,000. So it's doable, but really we wouldn't have any money. We'd be predicting that we'd have about 20,000 at the end of the job. seems that the committee wanted a lot more than that, as we talked earlier. So maybe this isn't the way the committee wants to go. Maybe the committee wants to go this other route, which is to alternate 1 only and not taking alternate 2, reducing the amount of PV on the roof. All the same numbers apply here. It just has a different base bid. So there's that budget. So now the overrun and the GMP is $340,000. You continue on, you mark that up, which is all part of a change order. That comes to $375,000. We're going to go back. I'm just going to quickly get to the punchline here. Same starting budget that we had within our project budget of $456,900. Same available funds of $232,000. But now the new number that we're trying to reach in a change order is $375,000. That would require an impact of additional funding of $143,000. Okay, so if we go back to the summary, we had 455. So if we were going to take alternate 1, we would be reducing that forecast at the end to roughly about just right over $300,000. 9 months left to go. And so those are the 2 scenarios currently presented for committee discussion. And I'll add one more. Obviously a reduced PV cost means if we were applying for the grant, we would be applying for a reduced number, lesser number. But if we add in a few things, it's probably about $2.5 million. Possibly the 25% of that is still a nice number that the town would get. You wouldn't get the big number, the full number, but 25% of $2.5 million is about $600,000. It's possible in 24 we get that cash. The town can maybe direct it to the building committee with the intention of putting the rest of the PV on the roof. If you remember that PV cost, predicted cost at this day was $264,000. You can know if you bid it again, it's going to probably be a little higher, but it's a plug and play. It doesn't have to go back in the building. All the infrastructure's there. It could be another way to finish up the project with all 1.35 megawatts. If we go to alternate 1, it'll be 1.15 megawatts. So it won't be 1.35. I'm sure there's hands. Tom Caputo.
Thanks, Bill. I guess one question, and I think you sort of answered it, and then one comment. On the question side, you said we've gone from, is it 1.35 to 1.15 if we were to not do alternate 2?
Correct.
Okay, so that's somewhere in the ballpark of like a 17% or something reduction in capacity or something along those lines.
Correct.
Okay, I have to double check that math. And again, you alluded to it, but there is nothing that would prevent us from being able to go and add that PV back in, with the exception of the fact that who knows, there could be escalation or maybe decreases in pricing depending upon how the market goes, but there could be obviously a different price, and there's probably a bit of overhead associated with sort of restarting a project along these lines. But there's nothing technically that would prevent us from being able to add that back on at the very end of the project, if we either had money left in our contingency or if we could secure this funding. Is that right?
There's a lot of ifs there, right? If you secure the funding, it goes into town general funds. If the town can direct it to us, we would not be doing this as a change order because everybody would have gone. So the committee or the school department or the town could go out for purchase and installation. We have the design, by the way. So and we're not going into the building like any other system. It's because everything is there on the roof that you have to plug into.
Okay, but there's nothing technically in terms of the construction or that would prevent us from doing it if.
It is set up and everything will continue to be PV ready, that they would go up on that building F roof, put the panels, pull the cables to the inverters, and we're good. That's it.
The inverters are on the roof too.
Okay. And then I guess one comment, it sounds like there were a bunch of additional costs that were sort of layered in there for kind of changes to the electrical infrastructure, as well as the $79,000. I'd be curious just to understand a little bit more about that at some point. I don't know if now is the time to do it. To that end, I guess my question is, and I admit I'm one of the folks that has to leave shortly, but is this something we want to fully try to resolve now, or given the fact that all this sort of came in yesterday relatively late, is this something that we can pick up next week as we have some time this week to digest it?
So I truly think, and Pat and I talked about this, that the reason we scheduled this meeting for next Thursday may be that we talk this through and put a pause on it and finish up the rest of our business and then resume our discussion on this topic next Thursday at 8 o'clock.
Okay.
Or we spend the
however the committee wants to operate there, but I think there's enough going on here, and there's enough for us to get our arms around. I certainly, as one committee member, would appreciate an opportunity to maybe pick it up next week after a little bit more opportunity to digest it.
And there may be things that the committee asks this team to do in the next few days before that meeting, and that's why we needed some time. Quickly, Tom, I'll go through. I think it's a very good question. What are the extra costs that were not in the bid for the PV? Well, because we are filed sub-bid and we're under Chapter 149, anything to do with the roofing had to be done by the roofer as a change order. So there is an estimate for that that Skanska pulled together, about $50,000, slip sheets, membrane issues when you touch the roofing. So that's that. Premium time for off-hours loading, because we have an active campus. The idea is that very likely we would be craning up the material after school hours and working around the school schedule because of the campus. So there's a cost there. If we needed it, seems logical. Of course, if it's in the summer, it's non-issue, but we don't know. We're going to try and start in spring. There's some conduits going through some brick walls that likely will have some masonry coordination for waterproofing. So that's a budget there. And there's a budget to deal with just the connectivity to internet. Don't want to go, it's just every time you touch the internet, seems like you need a few people to get that coordinated. So they put money in there for resources there. Things that have already been changed to coordinate for this anticipated change order is we know that we have a design by SDA that we agree to. So that's the value there, $77,000. We were asked when we were looking at this with the electrical department and Belmont Light and the fire department to add more kill switches for this. So that's a fast switch that you can hit at exit points or entrance points. And if you're going to address something happening, you want to make sure that this is disconnected from the network and it's not collecting power. So kill switches. There's a minor amount of architectural impacts, and so those are being handled by a couple other costs here of about $13,000. There was a need to get pathways up to the middle school roof that were in part of the phase 1 construction. So that's back down to the the electrical room, which is in phase 1. So that's the $58,000. And then there's some adjustments to the switch gear to accept 1.3 megawatts power that wasn't incorporated into the phase 1, and that's $54,000. So that's where all the changes are, Tom, for this. And if this was bid as a building complete, the PV vendor would be taking care of all this as one bid price. But because it's an active Chapter 149 project, different trades have to take care of their own work.
Yeah, for what it's worth, some of those seem like things that should have been anticipated. I mean, we've been talking about PV for ages. I don't know why we need to upgrade switch gear or why we need to deal with sort of access to a roof that we always talked about putting PV on. But I guess that's just the net. Sometimes those are just the issues we end up having to deal with, right?
I don't have issue. I equally agree with your comments. I don't have answers to that because we've been forging ahead with the best solution for the project. But I do think there's a discussion that has to happen truly. Because some of these really strike me as things that should have been anticipated, because we've been talking about 1.3 megawatts on the roof before we talked about a building with brick on it.
True enough.
I want to be blunt. Okay.
Thanks for
I just echo the same comments. Thank you.
Bill. Bill, you're overwhelming me with detail, and you're successfully trying to be so transparent. I'm with Tom. We need more time. And what I'd like to see between now and next Thursday is kind of an executive summary sheet that has these various comparisons on it. And let me say a factor which is not just financially driven is keeping, it seems to me, Wayne Griffin as our contractor, because it'll prevent an awful lot of finger pointing in the future. So I think we ought to try to do that. My gut reaction is we should take the base bid from Wayne and alternate one. But before I come to that, on one sheet, can we get, with just the base bid, what's the megawatt that the output is, and what is the bottom line figure that will cost us, with all the summary of all the detail that you just gave us worked in, just so we have that compared to with what we have left in our contingency. Then the same thing with the alternate number one, taking base bid and one. What's the generated capacity? And again, what's the bottom line figure? And then with an alternate number, and also compared to our contingency. As I understand it, it's like 4% over what our allocated money was. But anyway, I don't want to get lost in the weeds. I just want kind of, as I say, executive summary. The alternate number one and two, same thing. Total cost, total amount of output, and just kind of have the main figures before us between now, given to us between now and next Thursday, and deal with this next Thursday. Thanks.
And Bob, if it pleases you and the committee, can I commit to getting that to you on Tuesday?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Kate's 48 hours, so that's fine.
No, and I just wanted to be clear.
Thanks, Bob.
And our consultants heard that. That's why I brought it up. So, and with a holiday coming up tomorrow. And just to layer one more thing, I didn't mention what the base bid was. The base bid was, Don, am I right in saying 0.95 megawatts?
I'd have to recalculate that.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll take Joel's question next and then go back to that.
Thanks, Bill. I'd like to add one more column to Bob's chart. If we could have, what's the plus minus delta on operational cost? What does that really mean to the school as far as operating cost and cost of power for each of those alternates? Again, it's some order of magnitude. I realize it won't be exact, but that's also a factor in our planning.
That may take a little while. I'll do as best I can. We may have to fill that in, but I don't know what it's costing to run the building. So, okay.
No, I guess what I'm saying is, based on the delta in the power generation between the various alternatives, what does that really mean as far as?
Oh, what are we saving in megawatts? Okay, right. That's with today's unit, with today's rates. Okay, yep.
That should be hopefully an easy calc.
That's a little easier. Yes. Kate?
I think tacking on to Joel, I'm wondering if we can bring this back to the bigger picture in terms of the Z&E goal that we had seen even prior to me being on the committee, so that, for example, are we already getting credits for some of these systems that are operating? So I'm wanting to see the big picture in this plan. And I also appreciate the idea of taking this up again next week. So for the record, I guess I'm just wondering, it appeals to me to, even if we may be close to our margins, to stay with the one entity and simply get it done in this moment and not prolong it.
And that's what we have to discuss. So I mean, what I do is not put a pause on all of this right now and get the information Kate, I'll put another
Yeah.
column, whether, are we still ZNE ready? I think we'll call it level or case D.
Yeah, and I guess I realize my comment could be misinterpreted in terms of alternates 1 and 2. I don't think we should be pushing off the total megawatt plan by not including alternates in this project.
Okay. So a little work to do. I will endeavor to get this summary put together over the weekend with help of the consultants and get it out to you by Tuesday. And it will hopefully summarize. It's not going to be any new information, but summarize. By the way, it's 0.93 megawatts if we take the base bid. So, I mean, round numbers 0.95, 1.15, 1.35.
But we can't take the base bid and keep Wayne, is what you're telling us.
Correct. Correct. Yep.
That's right.
Okay. We have a little more business to do, and I might change it up just to try and get things accomplished that we have. I think we still have a quorum, right, Mike, Chris? So, by the way, I think at this point, I did have the plan to engage the community. I think it might be still good to do that because while it's fresh in our minds, the PV, I would like to take some community comments specifically on PV. So, Brian Eiler, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you for all the information regarding PV. Just a quick comment. I think if we rely on the town to use any IRA money, Inflation Reduction Act money that may arrive in 2024 for PV, or maybe even for anything related directly to the high school, I don't really see that as a realistic expectation. There are a lot of value engineered items in this project that the town would probably prefer to put money towards, say the White Field House, west of Harris Field, et cetera. So I think planning on using that we might use that money to complete PV is not a viable, realistic option.
Thank you. Yeah, nothing's guaranteed. And so that's a very good point.
Bill, just for clarification, as I understand it, this is a solar panel directed grant. Money could never be diverted to west of Harris Field. Am I correct?
No. The way I understand it, Jennifer's not here, and I'm hoping that she's going to be here in the next meeting. This grant is not particularly just for solar. It's for really trying to get innovation to help produce alternative energy solutions, reduce the impact to our planet. The money goes into general funds, Bob. And the way it explained to me is it's general funds money. It could be appropriated in any way at any type by the town.
Then Brian's right.
Yeah, right. It could be, now maybe there's an overwhelming surge from the community that says, wait a minute, guys, this is to help offset costs. Why aren't you doing that to fill the 15%, 16% increase in costs over the budget? Yeah, it's a good point. But we don't have control over that. The building committee does not have control over general funds. So, okay, is that it for the community? Thank you. And by the way, there were other community members that helped out on this, and I do appreciate their work and talking and working with the town administrator's office, with me. Over this course of 6 months, we spent a lot of time working as a team to achieve what I see as very viable. Next Thursday, it'll be a release of PV for this project, which is credible, as I mentioned to Tom. We were talking about PV before we were talking about what almost grade configuration. I don't even think we had the 7 through 12 grade configurations settled, but we were talking about covering the roof with PV. So it's been a long discussion. I'll let Brian Cobbler, hello, Brian, speak.
Hi, Bill. Hey there. Just a favor to ask if there's a simple executive summary that everyone could see. It would be great to share that, just to understand. I came on late to the meeting, so it'd be great to see that if you can.
Yeah, that was asked for to get prepared for our next meeting, a simple 1 page, so it's not so complicated. And I think the community would benefit from that as well as the committee. So we will definitely be doing that. I think there was like 4 or 5 columns, so it's not going to be terribly complex.
Lisa?
Hi, thank you, Lisa Pargoli. I just have a question that I haven't seemed to got an answer to about sticking to the solar. Is that we know about what the cost savings is going to be for the solar, but no one has been able to tell me if you know what 30% is of savings. What's the 70% estimated that's going to cost the town in electricity for the runoff?
Yeah, I don't even know.
You got to have some kind of an estimate. If you can estimate how much 30% is going to save you, how can you not know and have an estimate about what the 70% is going to be overrun? I mean, I don't understand that. Seems pretty simple for people who are in the field.
I'm sorry, but I don't understand your question. Can someone explain what's the 30% you're talking about?
We were told that I think it was approximately about $157,000 or more savings using solar per year.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Leaves 70% of what the town is going to have to pay through Belmont Electric. But nobody seems to has answered my question, but I can't understand why. And estimate what 30% is. You have to have a good estimate about what the 70% is. The school is humongous compared to the other schools. So it's going to be a large chunk of money. And now that the costs go up. So I think we should have an estimate the taxpayers should know.
Bill, Lisa, that's exactly the question that Bob McLaughlin asked. And so he asked it in a different way, but we have to pull that information together. You're going to see that in a summary a week from now in our meeting. That's exactly what was asked by Bob McLaughlin. What is the delta? But first we have to start with what's the total cost. And that's what you're asking. So we will have that. And maybe I'll be asking Dave for a little help, but we will answer your question.
Bill, I can throw a little information on what I'm paying right now if you want, if that helps.
Well, I mean, why don't we just put it all in a summary? So it doesn't.
Yeah, Dave, I'd like to work with you to get that into the summary that we prepare.
Okay.
Brian.
Just while you're making those columns, I think one of the things that's realistic, right, is that Belmont Light soon and again in the future over the life of this facility is going to have significant spikes in energy costs. And so I think it's one of the great things about solar, I really want to encourage the committee, is you've got a built-in hedge against all of that future rise in costs. And so if you have a column that says, today's 12 cents or whatever the rate is for the municipal rate, but in a year it's up by 30% or 40%, why not just have that as as an X factor to add to your calculations, one additional line, and then you'll see how that hedge is really effective.
I have a second question, which no one has answered me yet either. I think it's extremely important, where we have an idea that the solar panels have about a life expectancy of 25 years, which is not really that long. And they'll have to be replaced and removed. And there's going to be a big cost to have that done. And it's going to cost a lot of money to have them disposed of, since they're funny enough, they're toxic. Green as they are, they're toxic. And then we have to replace those panels. There needs to be, is there a contingency for this? Because it's going to be big money, especially in 25 years, if you want to continue to go green.
So we talked about this, and I'll say first answer, no, there's no contingency in the building committee's money, and obviously it's a town planning issue. However, the panels don't disintegrate in 25 years. They're actually a performance rating that these panels see every year. They have a slight degradation in their performance, but they're still performing in 25 years. They're still performing in 30 years. They may not be performing they wouldn't be performing at the same level they were in the first 10 years, but they're still there. The challenge always with PV is the roofing. So the roofing that they sit on will need to be replaced at some point. And so the panel longevity is really tied to roofing more than the panels themselves. And so a roofing project would have to be inclusive of a panel solution. Lisa, it's not panels themselves.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's still going to be a very large cost towards the end. And this is just one of those big things that Belmont's notorious for, is not maintaining or preparing. 25 years will come. And even then you say they start losing power. They're not as active after like 10 years or so. So then we're going to be spending more money from Belmont Electric for the runoff if the solar panels aren't doing the job they should be doing at when they're first installed.
It's no different than any other solar panel, and that was all figured in with the estimation of savings in the 30 years of the that was
cool.
So I'm going to move on, but you bring up good points, but that's the reality of TV. So.
The money.
Okay, so committee members, I'm losing you probably in a half hour. I'd like to see if we can do a couple of things. I'd like to see if we could focus on the change order and maybe skip, if it's all right, these changes, the pending changes, and then move right to treasurer's report and pay bills. We have any objection to that?
So moved.
Okay. No, okay, that's not a vote. So let me just find this. Hold on. Here we go. So this is typically a process by which our design team, Brian Spangler, sort of leads a description of the changes that are being proposed. There are 25 here. There's not big ones, a lot of big ones. And Brian, you usually had like what a 10 grand or something cut off where you're going to talk about.
That's right.
Yeah, but we could go back and talk about any that the committee wants. And so I'll just have Brian start, and then we'll continue this conversation. In the end, it's about $250,000 that we're looking for approval, but we'll get to that number.
Okay, I'll start with PCO 759 R1. This is related to relocating a large ventilation fan in the field house. This fan was intended to be vented out through the north wall of the field house through some existing translucent panels. And when we reviewed the fan location in detail in the field prior to installation, it was determined that the intended location really was not feasible because of the degree of modifications that would have had to have been made to those translucent wall panels, and also some support steel that supports the wall, the exterior wall itself of the field house. So as a result, we relocated the fan to the adjacent east wall. And the cost represented here is the cost to relocate that fan to the new location. And actually, we're saying relocate, but it hadn't yet been installed. So this is really just the cost associated with re-coordinating to the new location and picking up on some modifications that still did have to be made to the exterior wall in order for the fan to vent properly. Moving down to PCO 754 R1, the cost represented here is to coordinate some structural steel dunnage that supports several large, the main really rooftop units above the middle school. These revisions were required to coordinate with the selected and submitted manufacturer for the HVAC equipment. We also had to make some revisions to the extent of steel that supports open grating around the units. The grating is required to service the units. The extent of the grating wasn't really understood until the exact equipment was submitted and accepted. And so that needed to be revised. Moving down just a few to PCO 779. The cost here is to paint a temporary platform that was constructed to cover the orchestra pit until the permanent false floor system could be constructed. Also included in this cost is to provide a paint finish for the removable rail system along the edge of the orchestra pit on the audience side, and some carpet sections that had to be modified to coordinate with the railing sleeves along that edge. Moving a few rows lower to 773. The cost here is to provide wiring for an automatic transfer switch for the middle school elevator. The switch actuates the change from normal power to emergency power if there's an outage. The switch itself was included in the original contract documents, but not the wiring and labor associated with the wiring. And lastly, PCO 780 R1. The costs here is related to several revisions and clarifications that were made to the head and sill conditions of a new hollow metal window frame overlooking the field house. It's located in the southeast corner of the field house at the second floor. These revisions were required to coordinate with the existing structural conditions as they were uncovered during selective demolition of the existing load-bearing wall. We had to take out some of the block, which exposed some of the steel, and we had to provide some additional steel to make sure that the existing construction, which was to remain, some of which was to remain, was structurally stable. So that's it for items above 10K this month. And as Bill mentioned, and as always, happy to answer questions on any of the others.
And I do think that as we move, Brian, you and I talked about this, into these cleaning up and resolving these change orders are getting smaller. Maybe we change the threshold. Maybe what we decide is pick on like 6 or 8, just, we wouldn't do them all, but they are getting smaller. So we'll see what works right for the committee. And we don't need to do this right now. We can talk about it, but this total change order, prime contract change order number 42 is for a value of $250,021. Any questions from committee members on this out here? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve prime contract change order number 42 in the amount of $250,021?
So moved, Bob McLaughlin.
Well,
Pat second.
okay. Committee members, I'll ask you please to turn on your mics, and I'll go through roll call. Emma Thurston, all in favor? Yes.
Yes.
Pat Bruce?
Yes.
Diane Miller?
Yes.
Dave Blazon?
Yes.
On Caputo left, Joel Mooney. Joel Mooney left also. Kate Bowen?
Aye. Bone aye.
Bob McLaughlin?
Yes.
Chris Messer?
Yes.
Mike McAllister?
Yes.
And Bill Lovello, yes. Okay. Thank you, folks. And we'll move right on to invoices to be paid. Mike, I heard your voice. We're going to do these in groups again?
Yep. So it's time to pay bills. We have 10 invoices to pay in total, and we'll do it in 3 separate batches. So batch number 1 consists of 3 payments. I'll read it, and then I'll pause after each one in case anyone wants to ask questions or give information. So a purchase order number 23827 in the amount of $3,906 paid to Anderson and Krieger regarding invoice 144383 dated November 4th, 2022.
And this is for, all of it is for their assistance in preparing and advising on the bid package for photovoltaic system.
Okay, the next one is in that batch is purchase order 27953 in the amount of $132,000 to be paid to CHA regarding invoice 38840-42 dated October 28th, 2022.
And this is the monthly draw for our owner's project manager.
Last one in that batch is a purchase order number 23582 in the amount of $101,558 paid to Perkins and Will regarding invoice 195201 dated October 28th, 2022 for a total amount in batch 1 of $237,464.
And this is also the monthly draw for Perkins and Will design team. Any comments or concerns with any of these 3 that represent the project team invoices? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve?
Yeah, Bob McLaughlin move approval of the design team professionals as stated, all 3.
Pat second.
Second. Okay, all in favor? Emma Thurston?
Yes.
Pat Bruce?
Yes.
Diane Miller?
Yes.
Dave Blazon?
Yes.
Kate Bowen?
Bowen aye.
Bob McLaughlin?
Yes.
Chris Messer?
Yes.
Mike McAllister?
Yes.
Bill Lovallo, yes. Okay.
All right, batch 2 consists of 6 payments. First one is purchase order in the amount of $775 paid to Bid Docs Online regarding invoice 225947-1 dated Halloween, October 31st, 2022.
You say Halloween on the invoice, Mike? So bid documents, this is the process by which we went out to bid publicly for the PV system, the cost.
Next one is purchase order number 23001997 in the amount of $281,000 paid to CCS Presentation Systems regarding invoice 107375 dated September 27th, 2022.
This is for the smart boards for phase 2. It's the smart boards for the phase 2.
Thank you.
Next one is purchase order 29467 in the amount of $6,650.25 paid to Creative Office Pavilion regarding invoice 1832 on December 23rd, 2021. That's an old one.
This is for Creative Office. This is FF&E for wrapping up phase 1 equipment.
Good, thank you.
Next one's purchase order 2300196 in the amount of $1,250 paid to HubTech regarding invoice 22-15525 dated October 21st.
This is 1 month rental on storage of the smart boards for HubTech.
So Sandra, we're going to see this every month, like we saw our Connex boxes for a while, right? While we store those and through probably, I don't know, April or something like that, May. Yeah.
Or maybe a little beyond. Yep.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Next one is a purchase order in the amount of $540 to NEC regarding invoice 92796-795 dated September 25th, 2022.
This is some of the work that NEC did for the splice rooms, the PE offices, phones. During
technology, right?
Yes, it's phone work. Yeah, NEC.
Oh,
yep.
Okay.
The final one in that batch is purchase order number 25176 in the amount of $7,840 paid to UTS regarding invoice 102306 dated October 14th, 22 for a total amount in batch 2 of $298,055.25.
So this is material testing for the month.
Yes.
Any comments or concerns with this group of vendor invoices? And hearing none, I have a motion to approve.
Bob McLaughlin, move approval of the several invoices just read into the record by Mike.
Pat, second.
Okay, all in favor? Emma Thurston,
Yes.
Pat Bruce,
Yes.
Diane Miller,
Yes.
Dave Blazon,
Yes.
Kate Bowen,
Bowen, aye.
Bob McLaughlin,
Yes.
Chris Messer,
Yes.
Mike McAllister,
Yes.
Bill Lovallo, yes. Okay. Last one.
And finally, batch 3 consists of just 1 payment. Purchase order number 23581 in the amount of $3,670,265 paid to Skanska for application number 46 dated November 1st, 2022.
Any comments? We went over this before. Questions? Okay, construction payment then. Do you have motion to approve?
Hearing none, Bob McLaughlin approves Skanska's application 146 and the amount is read into the record.
Pat, second.
Okay, all in favor? Emma Thurston,
Yes.
Pat Bruce,
Yes.
Diane Miller,
Yes.
Dave Blazon,
Yes.
Kate Bowen,
Bowen, aye.
Bob McLaughlin,
Yes.
Chris Messer,
Yes.
Bill Lovallo. Mike McAllister, I forgot about you.
Yes.
And Bill Lovallo, I would say yes. Okay, thank you. I'll stop sharing and quickly try to wrap up here and go through the construction activities for the month and the schedule, which was brought up earlier. And this is Mike Morrison. Mike? Okay, you're up. Go right ahead. So this is for October activities.
Yep. So just starting outside, we're continuing with developing the softball and soccer fields as well as the baseball field. So we've been working on the main drains, which are around the perimeters of those fields. And then also as we kind of work closest to the school towards the east side, we're kind of developing further along. So the soccer field closest to the school, they have some of the lateral drains installed, as well as the sand layer, which is beneath the loam. And then you'll notice like the next field over is kind of working towards that goal. And then the baseball field on the farthest west is furthest, east is furthest kind of behind that. So that's ongoing. And we've also proceeded with granite curb and sidewalk prep. So we're really starting to develop the field. We're trying to take advantage of the weather and get as much site work activities done before the weather breaks as we can. So that's been good. The weather's been helpful, and we're proceeding with that. On the exterior of the building, there was a question earlier about kind of weather tight. We are tight. We're hoping that by Thanksgiving, we start to see the mason demobilize. They have probably 2 strong weeks, and we'll kind of probably the end of the month be wrapping up their scope. The curtain wall subcontractor, K Glass, is probably like a week or so behind. Right now, they have a small storefront and D building left, but mostly they're focusing on trims and covers and sunshades. So they're doing more of the finish work, but we are tight, which is definitely helpful this time of year as we're trying to kind of keep the heat in on the exterior. Inside, we're progressing in D building with finishes, so paint's going up. Ceiling grid, rough electric, all our rough inspections are essentially done on 2 through 4. Board is up. Like I said, obviously paint's on the wall. On D1, we're falling back there. So, board is up. We're working on some of the infrastructure required from the millwork and casework on D1. So those are some of the art spaces. So they have some of the more detail in those rooms, which we're working towards, and some of those finished trades are starting to mobilize. Here in F building, we're getting sign-offs regularly with inspectors to get board up and starting to close up walls in F. So on schedule, the sequence is there. I mentioned the wall framing, the drywall, the infrastructure, the rough. We've been hitting our dates very well, and we're right on schedule there. And we're waiting on the finish guys, the casework, to start pushing the flooring and go through there. So the flooring should start, look ahead, flooring starting next week. We'll start floor prep on D2, casework delivery next week on D2 and D3. So we'll start seeing those rooms really come together, wall tiles progressing. So you're really starting to get a good feel of the building, and you'll see that from some of the pictures, what this space is going to look like. So I'm not sure. I mean, it's really a lot of the same repeat activities for November as December. There's really, as October, the really difference is going to be flooring and casework are going to pick up in November, where they weren't really here in October. Photos. So this is some of the interior framing. So you can see the rough infrastructure and the blocking in place. This is F building. So that's ready for board. That's what it looks like when we get our inspections. And then as soon as those inspections hit, Sweeney, our carpenter and a drywall subcontractor will begin boarding those walls up.
That's a bathroom group. This is bathroom, right?
Yep. You see the plumbing in the wall. That's a wet wall right there. Yep. And there's some of the buzz ceiling. So that's the elevator on the right. That's actually right on our side of the phasing wall. So it's not far from the finished space of the high school. It's just kind of right on the other side of that plywood wall. And on the left, you see some of the overhead roughing, the protection on the MEPs, and some of the paint going in. So we're moving right along. These are some of the large walls on the media center and stair 4. So finishing those spaces, trying to get all the high work done. These are the fire doors on stair 4. So these kind of frame out similar to stair 3 on the phase 1 side, which is kind of right at the entrance. Stair 4 is the associated stair for the middle school. So getting this infrastructure in place was a big piece for us to then start with ceilings, which you'll see in another picture here. This is a typical classroom, drywall, the paint in the column. So that's right at the corner. This is the curb. So this month we put binder down on the remaining roadways for phase 2, and you see the curb in this photo and the fields in the background. That's the sand layer going in. You can kind of see in the back there. So those are the fields right adjacent to it. So this is F West. So on the right of this picture is the existing field house, just to kind of orient yourself. And right now we 3 days or so on that elevation before the masons kind of completed and starting to wash. And then they got, like I said, another week or so on that north. What you see in the background of that picture, that's the north side of D building. And then they'll drop down to the level 1 area. So really the high work is wrapping up in the next week and a half, and then moving right on to level 1 masonry. So really, you can see in the photos where we don't have windows, which right now is essentially the F North corridor where we're loading materials. Everything is tight, and that's a big benefit for us. It's something we should, our schedule didn't allow. We were trying to do temp protection before the winter months on phase 1, which we always knew was going to happen. It was just the reality. But this phase, we're in a lot better shape with the building envelope before the cold weather starts. So it's really a benefit. Here's some of the ceiling grid you see in the corridors. So you can also see in the background the blue tape, that's wall tile. So in the main corridors, you see some of the wall tile. We have some protection up over it, but really progressing with the finishes there. The above ceiling inspections have been, are ongoing. So that's the status there.
Thank you. Just a comment I'd like to make, which is our state, Tom, CHA, right? We brought the state's MSBA through this past week, first time on the project period because of COVID. And it was a great conversation, a great tour. They're impressed. And I don't know, I just felt like that was well received by Jennifer. I don't know if you got anything back from her.
Yes, I did get feedback. Very impressed.
Okay. Any questions from the committee on the progress of the project here? So a lot of work over the winter will be going on inside, and the outside will kind of look the same for a while, right, Brian? And I do want to give a shout out to Skanska first for helping manage the binder placement, which required all the parking for the contractors to go into the neighborhood. There's a tremendous plan and effort put together to minimize the impact to the neighborhood, but we had to get the contractors' trucks, 120 of them or something, off the site for the month. Emma, thank you for being sort of the liaison with the neighborhood and coordinating that effort with messaging and so forth. I think I felt success. I heard some actually very kind comments from neighbors too towards the contractors, and actually I heard some conversations where the contractors were sorry they had to do this, but I just thought it was a really good community help. So anybody else? Okay. So then the schedule is the last one, and I'll share this. And it's the last thing I have. You want to talk? Okay. Sure. Mike, you already kind of told us about this, but go right ahead.
Yeah. So I mean, we're focused on the whole schedule, but really the ones we zero in on are what's in red. And right now the critical path runs through flooring. That's what you see there, that large chain of sequences. That's following the flooring crews as they work through D and F building. So what we're
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
So you said you're going to start next week, the flooring. It looks like you might be a week early on your schedule.
Yeah, so that's we're getting with the prep. So they're going to come in and start prepping the floor. And that was a conversation Mike Gear had with those folks. Like the deliveries might not come in until the 23rd, but they're going to get in early and start prepping to try to help this red. Anything we can do to help the red is what we're working on. So, we have the ability, there's no one on the floor. They can get in there and start prepping while we're on the delivery. So we'll see floor prep starting on the 15th. This is, if we're constantly evaluating how we can improve these dates in red. So that's the story right now. You can see casework starting. The deliveries coming the 15th. That's a little bit above on D2. So they're in earnest by the time they shake everything out and actually start work will likely be the 16th. And they're going to be, this is an unfortunate consequence of what we talked about earlier. So right now you see that we're going to have flooring and casework on D2 at the same time. It's not ideal. It's not how we would like to operate, but it just means more sequencing for us to manage where people are going to be on that floor to make sure we're working, efficiently, safely. Not how we would want to operate, but it's how we're kind of making that move. So it's constantly evolving, and we're just working towards that date with an eye on the April completion of the phase 2 building, which is you see down below in that Skanska section, Bill. That's the phase one, the final building department inspections, April 13th. That's our date, that's our mission. That's going to give us ample time to make sure that all the punch lists have been addressed and, you know, commissioning is completed and we're not, you know, sliding in head first when September comes. There's also obviously the big component of the project that can't start till the summer, which is the temporary stair removal and just that whole phasing line where right now we're kind of keeping the students away from our side of the fence. So obviously that division has to be maintained until students are done. And then when that is done in the summer, we got to rework those spaces and put them to the final condition. So that's that September date that we're obviously tracking as well.
And so this thing here, I just highlighted, even though I'm not good at this, this is a big effort that happens, you know, the integration when the students get out of the school and just getting all the phasing pulled out and putting this together as the completed project that you're talking about. And I know there's meetings going on. We have 2 representatives from the school department that are in those meetings now, Carla Kuza and Sarah Wynn, right? From school department. And they're working with the construction team to understand, to provide feedback and to prepare the messaging as to how all this is going to happen. So more to come. I won't go into it now. That's what I talked about earlier. We may have an extra meeting in here to get the community understanding what we're doing, but we're getting all prepared for, you know, the end of the summer. So thank you, Mike. Any questions from the committee members? Hearing none, I will go at this time. Is there any new business from committee members? I know I have some work to do, but I know I could pull this off for our next meeting, get prepared. Are there any community comments at this time that we didn't cover earlier? I'll give it a minute or two. Actually, I won't. I don't see any. It is 10 o'clock. And I will say that we do have our work cut out for us to get our PV awarded next week. It needs to be done because we have a 30-day window and we'll be pushing up against that with Thanksgiving coming. So we really can't push this off after next week, but that was all planned with the extra meeting. So thank you, committee members, for your input. Thank you for you know, digging into things. I'm looking forward to our meeting next Thursday at 8 o'clock. I'll send the invite out to get in your calendar, and thank you for today's participation. A motion to end the meeting?
Move to end the meeting on time.
Second?
Yep, second.
Okay. The meeting's over. Have a great day and a great long weekend, and I thank our veterans always. Goodbye.
Thank you.